Okay, Mark, do some rapid fire stuff here with you. We call this Phil's Five. Mark, who is your favorite player growing up?
Oh, favorite player. Well, my team was the Pittsburgh Steelers, so my favorite player was probably Terry Bradshaw. Well, actually, you know what? I'm going to take that back. I loved all the Steelers, but my favorite player growing up, and the guy that I wanted to emulate more than anybody else, and I wore his number when I was in high school, number 52, and that was the Hall of Fame center, Mike Webster. He was my favorite player growing up, which does tell you how strange I actually am. That my favorite player was an offensive lineman. Like that is the way you think about it. You're like, how stupid were you? Like really dumb. But he was my favorite player. I love watching Mike Webster play, and yeah, I love the Steel. I mean, I could rattle off the whole team, but he was the guy that I kind of wanted to be.
You knew pretty quickly you were destined for an offensive lineman.
You know what? It's funny because I started playing. I was a quarterback when I started playing, and I was, not only one of the bigger kids on the team, but I was the most athletically gifted kid. So even as a young kid, I was the fastest kid on the team. I could out jump and out throw and out like just pretty much everything. But I was also one of the bigger kids on the team, and from the first time, honestly, from the first time I ever put my hand in the dirt in 3-point stance. I could just come off the ball and knock you off the ball. And I was never really taught. I just got in a stance and it all made sense. I had it like right from day one. I don't ever remember even having to adjust my stance. Like
Wow.
like nobody really coached me on how to do it. It just made sense to me. And I could come off the ball and just knock people around. And so that was always a skill set I had. And so, yeah, the offensive line stuff actually was like it came easy to me.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, who is your favorite teammate that you had during your pro career?
Wow, so many great teammates. But probably my favorite guy because of just our relationship and the way we studied the game and were connected. Well, there's two guys, both offensive linemen. In Washington, it was Mark Addicks. He played 10 years of professional football. Then he went to Harvard Med School. He's an orthopedic surgeon in Houston. He's a dear friend. I'm the godfather to his 5 kids. He's the godfather to my 3. But yeah, he is such a salty earth guy. We were roommates in Washington, and we are forever connected and bound to the hip. My favorite guy in Denver was Dave Diaz-Infante, and Dave Diaz-Infante was my backup for 5 or 6 years in Denver, and we used to affectionately call him the stunt guard because Dave would practice for me all week, and then I would play on Sundays. And you just think about sports in general, like how beautiful that is, because normally that situation would create animosity and
Mhm.
anger and vitriol between two people, right? Competing for the same thing. But we studied the game like we were playing it together. And like he had my back, I had his back. And it was interesting. In 1997, I left in November after a game against Kansas City where I played the game with no feeling in my feet. I had 2 herniated discs in my low back. And so I played that entire game. Like I said, both of my feet were completely numb. And so the next day I was flying out to LA and I was on an operating table the following Tuesday. And 27 days later, I came back to practice and was doing my thing. I was going to start. And I went to Mike. I called Mike into Greek's office. Steve Antonopoulos, our head trainer, said, "I need to talk to you." And he said, "Yeah." And I go, "Listen, man, if you think, we're making this playoff push, this playoff run, and if you think Dave would be a better option than me going forward, being that I'm coming off this back injury," I said, I'll back him up. Like you're not going to hurt my feelings. Like I will back him up, and I'll be the best damn backup I can be to help him and to ultimately help us win a championship. To which Mike said, "No, you're my starter. You're my guy." You're vital to our team just from not only playing wise, but from a presence in the huddle and everything else. And so, anyhow, I came
Wow.
back to play. But Dave, like, I would have gladly done that for Dave, and Dave, like I said, did that for me my entire time in Denver, and for me it added years and years to my career. So I'm forever in debt to Dave DeSinfante. So those two guys, Mark Addix and Dave DeSinfante, are my favorite teammates of all time.
Wow, that is amazing. That is what made that team so special. You may have just answered this, but what's the best team you ever played on? I know that Washington team won the Super Bowl back to back in Denver. Best team you ever played on?
Yeah, it's so hard because that '98 team, we went 13-0 with that '98 team, and we just ran roughshod through teams. But you go back to that '91 team in Washington, the only team it's still considered the best Super Bowl team in history. It's the only team in the history of the Super Bowl that had a top five offense, a top five defense, and a top five special teams.
Mm.
And you think about what we did, yeah, just in the playoffs alone. Like, we beat the Detroit Lions like 45-10 in the playoffs in the divisional round. Or first off, we beat Atlanta in the divisional round like 24-7 in just a sheeting rainstorm. And then the next week we beat Detroit like 45-10. And then we win the Super Bowl 37-24 against Buffalo. But we gave them a couple fourth quarter courtesy touchdowns. Like, that game wasn't even close. And so it's probably the most, and that team started off at 11-0. So it's probably the most dominant team in the Super Bowl era. Like, those two teams for me are neck and neck. But if I had to give the nod to one team, I'd probably give it to Washington, having a top five offense, top five defense, and top five special teams.
Yeah, that's amazing. Who's the best player you ever faced?
Probably Lawrence Taylor.
Yeah.
He was frightening, just absolutely frightening. And he rewrote what a edge defensive end / outside linebacker. Like, we're still trying to find Lawrence Taylor types in the NFL today. Like, he completely turned the league on its head, and athletically gifted, physically gifted, psychologically just mean as a snake. That dude was frightening to play against, and just the best player. I mean, and I played at a time that had Reggie White and Lawrence Taylor and Warren Sapp and John Randall and, Cortez Kennedy. And it was a cavalcade of, front seven, Junior Seau, just front seven guys that were, Hall of Famers, like, littered. The whole league was littered at that time. So some of the best players in the history of the league, Lawrence Taylor, Reggie White, were two of the best players that ever played this game.
Yeah, no, that was an awesome time with football. I mean, that's I grew up through that time, so like I have a nostalgia for that. But the guys you mentioned there, I mean, it's hard to top that. Okay, and then the best lesson you ever learned from a coach?
Wow. There's just so many football lessons. Just overall football lessons that you learn. And I don't know if these are necessarily from coaches or just football in general lessons, but the life lesson of sacrifice, of that we're better together than we are individually, and just the lesson of sacrificing. And I always tell the story, and I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. Marvin Washington was a teammate of mine in college, University of Idaho, and I was hurt my whole college career. And as a matter of fact, I was retired from football as a junior in college. It's done, and they weren't going to let me play anymore. And I begged them and pleaded with them, and and just begged them to let me play my senior year. And ended up playing my senior year only after I signed papers to limit their liability toward me as an injury risk. right?
Wow.
So that they weren't going to get sued.
What was your
Played my
injury?
Oh man, I had 6 knee surgeries, I had elbow surgery, I had all kinds of things. So anyhow, so I signed this paper, and then I switched from the defensive side back to the offensive side of the football, which I hadn't played since I came in as a freshman. So this is my redshirt senior year. I played 1 year of college football where I'm actually healthy. Started all year at guard. Had no agent, no interest, no nothing. And one night, Marvin Washington calls me up and says, "Hey, man, the Bengals are going to be working me out at the Kibbe Dome in Idaho tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock. Just crash my workout." So I crashed Marvin's workout, begged the scouts to work me out, told them who I was. They let me work out. I absolutely crushed Marvin in every aspect of the workout, from lifting to running to jumping and he's 6'6", like 265 defensive end. Like the dude was chiseled from a piece of granite, and I crushed him. He was a basketball player, and I crushed him in everything. And sure enough, 2 days later, my phone rings. It's Marvin. "Hey, the Jets are coming today. Show up to my workout." And 2 days later after that, it was another team, and then another team, and then another team. And he kept inviting me to these workouts, and I kept crushing him in every workout. And I always joke with Marvin, to this day, I probably cost you. He was supposed to be a second or third rounder. He got drafted in the 6th round. I go, "It cost you at least like four to like, I cost you somewhere between 4 and 3 rounds in the draft. Somewhere in there, I cost you." But he just kept inviting me, kept inviting me, kept inviting me. And then eventually I got on enough people's radar that they started calling me and started coming out to work me out individually. And so I don't play it down in the NFL if it's not for my teammate making that sacrifice, Marvin Washington. And then the flip side, or the continuation of the story, is after we won the Super Bowl in 1997, Super Bowl 32 against the Green Bay Packers, Shanahan comes down to the training room where I'm laying around with ice on, doing whatever rehab I'm doing. This is in the off season. And Mike says, "Hey, man, I need a defensive lineman. It's a swing guy, defensive end, defensive tackle." He goes, "I don't really care if it's the best player. I just want the best guy, the guy that fits our team the best." And he gives me a sheet of paper with about 7 names on it. And one of the names is Marvin Washington. He says, "Who should I sign?" I go, "Sign him. He fits us." Mike, to Mike's credit, goes, "Done." Leaves the training room, walks upstairs, gets on the phone with his agent, and gets him signed. And so Marvin and I win a Super Bowl together in 1998. So I don't play it down in the National Football League if it's not for Marvin Washington. And Marvin Washington doesn't have a ring if it's not for me. And it's just the sacrifice that you make for one another to be great.
Wow, that is an amazing story, Mark. I mean, yeah, it just sounds like that's a common theme there, that it takes a whole village to make an NFL career and just to get you to where you're at. It's that's an amazing story.
No question about it. Just it's awesome. It's something we share, and something we goof around with each other on, and bust each other's chops about. You're lucky I invited you to my workouts, and I'm like, "You don't have that ring if it's not for,"
Yeah,
it's what guys
yeah.
do, right? So, but yeah, that bond and that connection is incredible.